2022 is quickly approaching. In fact, we have less than a day until 2021 is over, which is crazy to think about. In this video, I'm going to be giving you guys some information regarding one of the most important things that you should keep in mind in these last few hours of 2021. This advice is particularly important for anybody that's a gig worker, a side hustler, has a Turo fleet, a car sharing fleet, or anybody that would consider themselves to be an entrepreneur. So let's get started. Today is the last day of 2021, and we are quickly heading into what many would argue is the worst time of the year, which is tax season. Now, many people dread tax season because it's the time that you oftentimes have to write a large check to the government, which is something none of us want to do. But in this video, I'm going to be going over some of my best tips and tricks on how you can save money this tax season, specifically if you're somebody that's a gig worker, a side hustler, if you have a car sharing fleet. I'm going to be going over some of the things that you need to know because this advice could potentially save you hundreds, thousands, if not tens of thousands of dollars. But before we dive in, if you guys could do me a huge favor, and if you could hit the like button and hit the notification bell for the YouTube algorithm, I would greatly appreciate it. This helps let YouTube know that you guys are enjoying my content, and thus it pushes my content out to a new audience. So if you guys could do that, I would greatly appreciate it. Additionally, I recently just started a Patreon page. This is something I will be diving into deep in 2022. It is a private group, so if you're interested in joining that, I will have a few links to that down in the description below as well. One other thing I would like to preface is the fact that I am not an accountant, nor am I claiming to be one. I'm such a proponent of hiring tax professionals to help you file your taxes. And I would argue that this is one of the best benefits, the best investments that you can make into you, your income, and your business. Hire tax professionals every single year. But I also think it's really important to be educated yourself. And I think that this video could help many of you that may be intimidated by taxes, may not know how deductions work, and may want to look at lowering your tax bill. Now, many of you watching this video are probably very familiar with how taxes work, at least on the surface. You probably get a W-2 or a 1099 from either your gig work platform or your job, and then you can oftentimes go onto platforms like Credit Karma or TurboTax and file your taxes. By going through these traditional portals, you can oftentimes take advantage of some deductions here and there. For example, if you have a dependent, if you recently purchased a house, or if you're somebody that has made charitable goods, these are all instances where you could deduct a certain amount from your tax bill. But the thing is, if you're somebody with a W-2, the amount that you can deduct from your taxes are somewhat limited. You don't have a ton of opportunities available to you. But on the flip side, if you're somebody that has a side gig, a side hustle, or additional sources of income, you probably have way more opportunities to deduct items from your tax bill and thus decreasing the amount you owe to the government and putting more money into your pocket. Now, I feel as though the vast majority of brand new side gig workers probably don't take advantage of tax deductions as much as they should. And I say that because I know that whenever I was first getting started, I definitely didn't take advantage of them. Now, what a tax deduction is it's basically an expense that you paid that can be written off on your taxes. Thus, it's something that decreases your taxable income, so it decreases how much you made on paper, and that means you don't have to pay as much in taxes. So let me give you a few applicable examples, and then we'll go into some of the details on how you can use deductions to lower your bills, and then at the end of this video, I'll give you some of the best tips and tricks that I use in order to keep track of all of these expenses. So let's say that you're a gig worker and you drive for services like Uber or Lyft. Chances are you probably use your phone to do it. Well, you can deduct your phone, or at least a portion of your phone, off of your taxes because of the fact that you're using it for business use. Another example could be this laptop. I actually just recently purchased this brand new MacBook Pro. I use it 100% of the time for business, meaning I don't use it at all for personal use, which means that I can deduct 100% of this purchase price off of my taxes. Additionally, could be things like tools, supplies, things like that. Really, the options are truly limitless. Now, if you're anything like me, whenever you're first learning about tax deductions, the ball is rolling in your mind of, oh my gosh, I could get all of this stuff for my work, for my business. How can I take advantage of this as much as possible? And though I understand the excitement, it's also important to understand that though tax deductions can be extremely beneficial and they can be a great way to get some really cool supplies for your business while lowering your tax bill, it's also important to understand the nuance that comes along with tax deductions, because not all tax deductions, not all expenses are created equal. equal, and you really have to be very strategic and very methodical with how you do this. First and foremost, it's important to decipher the difference between a personal expense and a business expense. You cannot deduct personal expenses from your business taxes, even if you're somebody that has a 1099 and you don't have a proper LLC. It's still important to differentiate what you're using these different things for and what expenses are being spent on. In addition to understanding and keeping track of which expenses are for business use and which expenses are not, it's also important to understand that not all expenses are created equal, and you can't deduct 100% of your expenses every single time. Different expenses have different classes per the IRS, and that means they have different deduction statuses. For example, under the IRS tax code section 179, you can deduct 100% of the cost of office furniture and office supplies up to $1 million. Under this specific section 179, office furniture is defined as any furniture necessary for the operation of the business, including chairs, desks, cubicles, cabinets, tables, lounge chairs, shelving, and artwork. So really anything that's in that category, you could theoretically deduct 100% if you needed to purchase it for your business. But while some things like office supplies and office furniture are 100% deductible, other things aren't. For example, meals are not 100% deductible, at least they traditionally are not. For example, if you go out of town on a business trip and you have to eat out at a restaurant because you were out of town, you cannot deduct 100% of that restaurant receipt off of your taxes. You can only deduct 50%. The caveat here, though, is that the IRS did temporarily change this for 21 and 2022. So if you went out to eat this year for business, you can deduct 100%, but after 2022, you can only deduct 50%. These different nuances continue throughout every single different type of expense that you could have for your business, and that's every single type of deduction. Vehicles are deducted differently than meals. Meals are deducted differently than office spaces. Office spaces are deducted differently than office supplies. There's a lot of different details here that you have to keep in mind if you're somebody that's really wanting to utilize deductions as much as possible. Now, again, I'm not going to sit here and try to describe and explain all of these because I know for sure I would do a disservice to it. I'm not an accountant and I rely on professionals to file my own taxes, but I do think it's important to educate yourself on the different opportunities. That way you can really try to take advantage of them as much as possible. So lastly, let's talk about how you can keep track of all of this, because if you're somebody that's never taken advantage of deductions before, there are a few important things that you should know. Number one is to keep all your receipts. This is a precaution in case you get audited, and this is something that is very important. You want to have records of where you spent your money and why you spent it, as well as how much, because if the IRS decides to audit you, they're not going to take your word for it, and they're going to want to see the evidence. Number two is to use an online tool to help you keep track of all of these expenses. For a long time, I was a huge fan of mint.com, which is like a free version of QuickBooks for personal use, but you can definitely use it for business use as well. And recently in the last year, I've upgraded to QuickBooks, which has been really great as well. I love QuickBooks. It's a great way to keep track of all of your expenses, to categorize everything, and it's also a great way to financially plan as well. If QuickBooks or mint.com isn't your thing, you can always use an old-fashioned Excel. Really, the way in which you do it doesn't matter, but you just want to make sure to keep track of everything accurately. And lastly is if you're somebody that is able to afford it, hiring a bookkeeper and an accountant is something that will pay for itself time and time again. I recently hired an accountant and a bookkeeper to do my books on a monthly basis, and it's something that I've just found so much benefit in. Not only has it saved me a lot of time, but it's also caught a lot of mistakes that I was making in my own bookkeeping, and thus these would have reflected in my taxes. I am 100% sure that my bookkeeper and accountant will end up paying for themselves this tax season, and having somebody that is smart, somebody that understands my business and how I make my money, and a resource to turn to whenever I have any questions, this has been truly invaluable in preparing myself for this upcoming tax season. And if you can't afford to hire a bookkeeper or an accountant, there's a ton of free resources online as well. A lot of what I've learned over the last year has not actually been from my accountant or my bookkeeper, but it's just been by watching free videos on YouTube. So ultimately, the reason why I wanted to make this video and the conclusion I've been trying to get to is the fact that I oftentimes feel like car sharing hosts, gig workers, independent contractors, these people oftentimes don't take advantage of deductions as much as they could because they simply don't know these deductions exist. If you have a multiple revenue stream, if you have a business, if you have a side gig, you can absolutely take advantage of some of these deductions that I've outlined in this video, and they can help you save a lot of money and thus put extra money into your pocket at the end of the year. It's never too late to educate yourself on on tax deductions, and it's never too early to start planning for tax season. That way you can take advantage of as many deductions as possible. Like always, you guys, if you have any questions, comments, if you have anything to add, I would love to hear it. So make sure to leave a comment down below. And while you guys are at it, make sure to hit the like button, hit that subscribe button, and hit the notification bell. And I will see you guys in the next video.